Hey all, birds on the bat here. So, you can probably notice all the cards in front of me. I've been uploading a bunch of my the cards I pulled over the past year to eBay. Decided that I'm going to move a bunch of the lower end stuff to try and recoup some cost and then put it into some graded cards that I'm looking for my collection. So I've been listing tons of stuff on my eBay store. I've already made some nice sales, a few Pokemon cards as well. So if you have any interest in that kind of stuff, I'll put the link down in the description. You can check out my store. Most of it's 2019, 2018, 2020 tops. Inserts, parallels, things of the sort, Hall of Famers, stars, you name it, rookie cards, a lot of stuff for everyone. So the reason I'm doing this video is because I'm doing a submission preview for another PSA submission. Yes, yet another. And this one I'm really looking forward to. This is the PSA quarterly special swinging 60s submission. Talking Ball Cards, one of the channels who's been my biggest inspiration for this channel, and I'm lucky enough to now have him as a follower. He did one of his own submission videos for this, so I'll put his link down in the description as well. He's also doing the quarterly special, so you can check him out and check out his video, see what he's sending in for it. So, also on that note, he put out a video today, gentle shout out, that he put out a video that he picked up a sweet Justin Herbert rookie auto out of Panini Origins, I believe it was, and it's up on his eBay, so you should check that out if you're into Justin Herbert and believe in him. Okay, so this quarterly special is a minimum of 20 cards, maximum I think $500, so a little higher than a value order. It's $9 a card. I have 50 cards here. They have to be from the 1960s and be standard sized cards. So without further ado, let's get into it. I decided that I was going to actually try and make a 1960 Topps Hall of Famers set. It's kind of an odd goal, but I just kind of got really into it at some point. I don't mind that the cards are horizontal one bit. I think they look absolutely awesome, right? With the mini, black and white photo on the left, and then the, portrait on the right. So this is a Whitey Herzog. He's one of the three players in the set who went into the Hall of Fame as managers later, being him, Sparky Anderson, and Dick Williams. So these aren't really very expensive. I think this card is going to get about a 6 to 7. It was listed as a EXMT online, so 6. I actually think it's a little better than that. It has really nice color, really good centering, no print errors or anything of the sort. So, yeah, beautiful card. Next, I've got a Nellie Fox, Hall of Famer for the Chicago White Sox. Again, looks really nice, has great color and clarity. The one issue up here is that you can see the edge has like a little ding in it, and that's really just because of the rough cut of the card. So, I don't know, I'm looking at a 5 to 6 on this. I'm thinking they might give me a 5 because of that, but otherwise it's a really nice, clean-looking card. And it has an image tilt, but it's actually quite well centered. Left to right is a little off, but yeah. So then I've got the Dick Williams. This card, it only costs you in a nice example like this about $5 on eBay. So I picked this one up, and it looks really clean. It does have a weird greenish print dot in the shadow under the brim of his hat, if you can see that there. And it has some, yellowing or browning around the edge. So even though the card looks really clean, and I'm thinking, 6 to 7 on this, I decided at $5, I might as well pick up another, right, and try my luck. So these two cards look really similar. The one on the left with the yellowing is probably a tiny bit better centered, although the one on the right is still well centered in its own right. The one on the right's probably got a slightly better image. There's just a little bit less of the snowing. There's a tiny bit of snowing in the darkness here. You can't really see it, and up there. So again, looking at about a 6 to 7. The one that gets the better grade and that I like more, I'll look to keep, and the other one I'll look to move. Okay, now we're getting to a big card, the 1960 Topps Willie Mays. So this card, I got a good bit of advice, a gentle push that I needed from JT Triple Crown to actually buy. So this card was listed as EX, and I think it's VGEX to EX. I think it's a 4 to 5. I'm expecting it to get about a 4. You can see that the corners have a little bit of wear on them, especially this top left one. That one has the most wear. Otherwise, you know, some noticeable snowing, although not nearly as bad as it looked on eBay. So I was quite pleased when it came in. And it has a few little tiny surface pin dots right there. And I think that's what's going to knock it down to a 4. But the thing is about this card is that look how well centered it is. It is beautifully centered. It looks fantastic. I mean, the eye appeal is stunning. So for the price that I paid for it, and I'll go into that when I get the cards back, because I think it's cooler to look at, you know, what the grade got, what you put into it, and at that time, I have no problem talking about what I paid. But I'm thinking this is going to get a 4 or 5. Probably closer to a 4 just because of those pin dots, but you know, it has a good shot at a 5. I mean, either way, the centering's beautiful, and actually the price has already moved enough that what I bought it at, it's already gone up in value. Okay, we've got the 1960 Topps Luis Aparicio. So this card is definitely off-center top to bottom, although it looks good, right? I'd rather my cards be off-center top to bottom than left to right. It just bothers me less if they're off-center top to bottom. So I'm expecting about a 7 on this card. I actually think it's probably about an 8 in sharpness, but the centering will probably take it down to about a 7. Nonetheless, a really good looking card of a Hall of Famer, and this isn't a very expensive one either. The Robin Roberts. So this one I picked up really cheap, like I think like 12 bucks or something, and this one's a 7 to 8 all day. I mean, it has a tiny bit of corner wear, top left corner, top right corner, but the top bottom corner here, I mean, the bottom corners are just sharp as can be. The card looks stunning. Centering's really strong. Not perfect, but strong. And looks fantastic, right? So I'll note that I don't have all of the Hall of Famers from the set. A lot of the ones, especially the bigger ones, and some of the middle ones, you know, Al Kaline, Warren Spahn, I haven't picked them up yet. So, you know, I only have so much money. Excuse me. Excuse me. So, you know, I picked up what I could, and what I also didn't force it. You know, if I didn't find a card that pleased me or that I thought looked good online, I didn't force it. I didn't pick up the card for the player. This is, you know, a slow game. It's a long game, long term that I'm going to be putting this set together, probably over years, and I'll look to upgrade it after I have the complete set. I know the mantle is going to hurt. It's probably going to be the last card that I pick up, but nonetheless. So now I've got the 1960 Topps Curt Flood. He's not a Hall of Famer, but I'm a Cardinals fan, as I've shown off in my other videos. So I picked up 3 Cardinal All-Stars who are not in the Hall of Fame, but who are in this set. And they are Curt Flood, Ken Boyer, who I'll show you later in this video, and Bill White. Now, Bill White, that card is actually pack fresh. Yes, it's pack fresh. I watched the video online that the seller linked me to of a 1960 Topps cello pack being opened this past summer. And in the pack, there was actually the mantle, which is mind-blowingly lucky, but... so it's unbelievably sharp, but it's in an SGC holder. I'm thinking of crossing it. That's why it's not here. I'm not sure whether I want to crack it out or just do a straight crossover, and I've still not yet decided. So that's why it's not in this submission. So anyway, I've got the Curt Flood here. I absolutely love the colors, the red and the black. I think it looks absolutely awesome. Even with the slight, off-centering top to bottom, it looks fantastic. And I'm expecting about 7 to 8 on this card. This is another one like the Aparicio. I think it's an 8 all day if it's perfectly centered, but the centering may knock it down to a 7. So then I've got the Richie Ashburn. Again, you can notice I'm getting really well-centered copies for the most part, and that's on purpose. I'm not buying the cards if they're not well-centered and if I don't like them. So this one, again, really sharp. I'm expecting about a 7 on this. You can see a little darkening of inking from the printing process down there on that line. It's a slightly out of focus card, but that's actually really common for the Richie Ashburn in this issue. One of the ways you can tell the focus is by looking at the outline next to the little, black and white player on the left. If there is a white outline next to them, that shows that the focus of the card is off. So, for instance, on the Curt Flood, you cannot see any white border line, which shows that the card is perfectly in perfect focus, but meanwhile the Ashburn, you can see that line, so it's a little bit out of focus. Anyway, next I've got the red Shane Dienst, Hall of Famer for the St. Louis Cardinals, although he was on the Braves at the time. He left to the Braves for a few years before eventually coming back from 61 to 63 and retiring. He was on the 57 championship Braves, so nice little stint in Milwaukee at the time. So this is a really sharp card. I think this card honestly has the sharpness of an 8 to 9, but with the centering, it will probably get a 7 with the potential to get an 8. definitely a little off center, but for how sharp the card is, I was actually okay with that in this instance, because the beyond the eye appeal, part of that is centering. Centering is certainly the main part of it, and then probably comes color. But beyond that, how sharp the edges and corners are do add to eye appeal, and this card is really excelling in those two facets. Now I've got a big card here, the 1960 top Sandy Koufax. So this card, I actually didn't particularly intend to buy because it's one of the more expensive cards in the set. Sandy Koufax still alive, luckily still with us, one of the most iconic pitchers ever. And the reason why I didn't intend to buy this card is because I already bought one. So I have two. And you can see the coloring is a little different. It's actually probably better on the one on the left. But I bought this card, and it's actually the most expensive card that I have ever purchased. And I'm not going to say what it is right now, what I paid for it. I'll say that when it gets back, but it is absolutely stunning. It does have a few of these really light minor print lines, and they can be a little distracting. They do cross the face, but if you just hold it back a tiny bit, you can barely see them, right? They really don't take away from the appeal of the card. And the centering is fantastic. A little off top to button, but it's really fantastic. Corners are strong. You might be wondering, okay, why the hell did you spend money on a second? Well, I'll tell you what I paid for this one, actually. I spent $62 on this one, which is a lot of money, and that's typically more than I would spend on a card. But I spent that much money on this card, despite the centering issues. It was noted in the listing, right? Definitely left to right, because it has really sharp corners, and fantastic surface gloss. So this card, I spent $60 on because a PSA 4 goes for $120. And I, looking at the pictures, thought there's no way, even with this centering, this card is going to dip below a 4. And honestly, it's probably a 6 to 7. It's probably about a 7 in terms of quality. I think it'll probably get about a 5 because of the centering. But nonetheless, this is a card that I'm going to resell because I anticipate this one will grade higher and it has better eye appeal just because of the centering. But this one, I saw the price. I jumped in at the last second on the listing. I actually outbid the guy by like 30 cents, the second guy. So kind of lucky there, but just the price was too good to pass up for what these things sell for on a middling low grade. So I'm expecting to make, $60-$70 on this card. And after, the amount of time between now and when I get this back, who knows how the price might move. I might make 100 off it. Who knows? Next, I've got the Hoyt Wilhelm. Definitely one of the lesser Hall of Famers. Probably the lesser Hall of Famer of the era. The first relief pitcher to go into the Hall of Fame, though. You can see this card's pretty darn well centered. Looks pretty solid. Definitely has a little white line on his face. I think that's a print error. But nonetheless, looks good. And you can see here that it has a gray back. And this is actually an interesting thing to bring up because I have a second Hoyt Wilhelm. And I actually bought these two in a lot. And this one I expect to get about a 5 to 6 on, probably about a 6. This one I expect to get a 6 to 7 on. It's a little worse centered, but it's a little sharper. And you can see that there's a bit of a color difference, right? The one on the left looks more cream, the one on the right looks more white. And that's because the stock in the 1960 top set was actually differing. They printed cards on two different stocks, and the best way to tell this is on the back. You can see the one on the bottom is gray, and the one on the top is much more of a cream color. Well, it was initially more white. It's considered the white variant. It's just that with age, it's creamed out some. But all the cards in the set are one or the other, and most of the series, are one series is completely white, one series is completely gray, and so on. The Hoyt Wilhelm, the series that Hoyt Wilhelm is in, actually differs. Some of the cards are white, some of them are gray, and it's switched up. So there are actually two variants because of that, of this card, and I got both in a lot from someone online. Next, I've got the Orlando Cepeda. Again, really well centered, you're catching the theme. This one, I really tried to go away from print lines, but this one had its, the print line's visible, that dark print line, but it doesn't really take away from the card too much, I think. Some of these cards from this set, you'll notice they have huge print lines, just completely crush the card, and it looks horrid. But this one really didn't take away too much, and I think it looks strong. I'm expecting about a 6 on it. You can see, tiny bit of corner touching, but it looks pretty darn good nonetheless. It might get a 5 because of that print error, but I think a 6 is probably more appropriate, especially given the centering, and it looks really good. The clarity's excellent, so. Another nice one. Now I've got the Don Drysdale, and this is actually an interesting kind of thing to note about the set. Some of the cards have these frequent kind of bleeds of color into the border. You can see it's bleeding there, it's bleeding here, yellow into the border. And that's actually common for the Drysdale, right? It's not something specific to this card, that's something specific to the Drysdale throughout the whole issue. So this kind of like yellow bleeding into the border shouldn't take away at all from grading, really. But this card, again, really well centered, really sharp. Tiny tick on that corner, but nonetheless looks excellent, right? Next, the Boyer. Again, well centered, nice in focus. Card for the Cardinals, PC. Won the 64 MVP with St. Louis. Then, one of the other big cards I've got in this submission. Definitely off-center to left to right a little bit, but the Frank Robinson. One of the more underrated players from that era. This card, a little more expensive than some of the other ones, and rightfully so because of how excellent a player he was. So, then I've got the Duke Schneider. Again, excellent player. There's slight light blue bleeding, just like the Drysdale had into the border. But you'll notice the centering of these cards is really something that I went after. Centering in corners. I put a lot of effort into this. I've been trying to get these cards for months now to find ones that are the quality that I want. And then I've got the Jim Bunning. And again, this card, lesser Hall of Famer from the era, ended up being a senator later in his life, but a United States senator, but nice card. I'm actually a little worried this one may come back as altered stock, and not because the card has been like intentionally altered in any way, but I looked at it on the side here, and actually I think this corner, it may not be so visible right now, but this corner looks a little thinned out. And I think so did one of the back corners. And I think this was in a screw down. And screw downs, with the pressure they put on the cards, and especially in the corners near to where the screws are, can kind of flatten them a little bit. And that can give you an altered stock, kind of what you get back on them. I understand that you can actually just kind of leave a card in like a box or something for a year, and it'll kind of, in essence, puff back up. So even if this does get, an altered stock kind of designation, I'll just put it in a box and let it sit for a while. But nonetheless, it looks great, right? I mean, same theme, really, strong looking card, probably about a 6, but nonetheless, it looks fantastic. Okay, then 61. I didn't really go for many cards beyond 60 because that was really the goal of this. But this card was just perfectly centered almost. I mean, a little off top to bottom, but it was really cheap, and I just could not pass it up for what it was. Richie Ashburn, Hall of Famer for the Phillies. This is on the Cubs. I'm a little worried it's going to come back miscut because the top of that circle is just dipping into the edge. And actually, the chipping might save me because it almost masks what's happening with the potential miscut, but nonetheless, it's a really strong-looking card. I'm expecting about a 6 on it. I think otherwise we'll get a 7 without that off-centering on the back, but I think a 6 is probably more appropriate. Then, I actually broke my rule centering on this one, and I got a 1961 Eddie Matthews. This is my first Eddie Matthews card. I picked this up just because of how sharp it is. I think it's probably going to get about a 7. I think the centering falls into the parameters of a 7. I know that I'm saying high grades for all these cards, but I really spent a ton of time looking for these. I mean, I've been trying to put together this order for 4 months or so. So, tons of time and money devoted to this. This is the Eddie Matthews, and I would like a better centered one, definitely, but, this card looks fantastic. Clarity's great, corners are sharp, edges are sharp, so beautiful card. Then I've got the 1963 Topps Mini Minoso. Not a Hall of Famer, although I actually think he should be in the Hall of Fame. This is one of his 2 Cardinals cards, the other one being the 62 Topps card, but that card has him in a blank black cap. They, in essence, photoshopped 1960s terms, right? In the 1960 way of photoshopping the logo of his previous team out, so it's not actually him in a Cardinals jersey. It just says St. Louis Cardinals at the bottom of the card. Although he was only on the Cardinals for 1 year in 62, his 63 card is him in a Cardinals jersey. So I had to pick this up because I anticipate he will make the Hall of Fame someday, and he was a fantastic player, an iconic player from the time period. Took one of the earliest players in breaking, the racial barriers of baseball. Really did a lot for the game. And you can see, it has a little bit of whitening down there on that corner. 63 Topps is tough set to grade because of this, monotone red bottom, but nonetheless, I think it's going to do well. It's pretty well centered, a little off top to bottom, you can tell, tiny bit off left to right, but it looks great. Really bright colored back on the 63 issue. This is my first 63 card I'm going to be sending off, so looking forward to getting this back for my Cardinals PC. Then this card. Oh boy. This card I bought thinking, that card looks really sharp, right? 65 Red Shade Indians, his first year as a manager of the Cardinals. So I bought this card thinking, wow, does that look sharp? I knew it was a tiny bit off-centered, left to right, top to bottom, right? So a tiny bit more towards this corner, but it looks fantastic. When I got this in the mail, I was blown away with how sharp this card is. I mean, the corners are beyond beautiful. You know, tiniest maybe touch of wear on this bottom right one. I think this card looks like a 9. And I just, honestly, you know, I can't see any way that this card gets anything less than an 8. And I think this card absolutely deserves a 9. It is unbelievable. I can't understand how this card is in such good shape for being so old. I don't think it's altered either. It's the correct size. It doesn't have any, you know, evidence of trimming on the edges for as far as I can tell. So really looking forward to getting this card back for my PC. It looks beautiful. Then this card. This is from my dad's childhood collection. I'm expecting a pure PSA 1 on this. But even in a 1, this card, it's about time I get it graded just because and encapsulated. It's Pete Rose. It's 1967 tops. You can see it has a big gnarly crease there and a few other creases throughout the card. Some smaller ones. Tons of wear. The centering is actually really nice though. A little off, but really nice. So it looks, you know, the eye appeal is actually pretty darn good. You can see on the back, you can see that crease, the aforementioned crease. There's another slighter one there. There's a few tiny ones up here, kind of like spider wrinkles along the top edge. So definitely not expecting much in this 67 card, but in a 1, it's already worth about 30-35 bucks. So price is just going up, and this is obviously, you know, PC card. I just think it's beautiful. Then there's a seller on eBay who sells these, you know, vintage cards, and they're all in absolutely stunning shape. It's one of those things where the seller says in the comments, "Oh, I pulled these out of packs in like 1970 or something." And I actually believe the seller because I've been measuring these cards, looking for evidence of trimming. There is no evidence, right? They are absolutely stunning. And I looked for a bunch of the better centered ones. A few of them had, you know, surface wrinkles and things of the sort that were not mentioned. And I didn't, you know, ask for returns or anything because I figured not only was that not intentional, but also they were not listed for very much. And a surface wrinkle isn't actually like damage that can come from the factory with a surface wrinkle. So anyway, I picked up some of the really well-centered ones or the better centered ones, even commons, thinking that they would probably grade pretty well and I could possibly flip them to, you know, set builders who might have an interest in them, right? So this is a Red Sox player, Joe Foy. I'm actually worried this one may not grade as well because there's a slight indent at this top corner. I'm expecting about a 6 to 7 on this. Nonetheless, it's not a fold, it's an indent up there. You can see how sharp these cards are. I mean, unbelievable, right? So, we'll see. I mean, even in a 7, I'll break even probably about, and, you know, it's absolutely fine. It'll find a good home, even if I lose a couple bucks on a card. Then, again, Red Sox, Dave Moorhead. Yankees, Charlie Smith. This one's one of the sharpest ones. I think this could even challenge a 9. Yankees, Tom Tresh. And you can see how sharp these cards are. And the seller has plenty more. I bought what I could afford and what I felt would probably grade well. Tug McGraw, pitcher for the Mets. I love the 67 set. I mean, look how gorgeous that is with the facsimile autographs. What a good-looking set. And this one actually has a common printing error, this white line. That's on all the Tug McGraws from the issue, so won't affect the grade. Then Jim Northrup, Detroit. Dave McNally, he's a lesser star, but still a star. Definitely really looking forward to getting this card back. Denny McClain, this is a cool card. I think this is his 3rd-year card. I think his rookie was 65. Everyone, knows went on to win 30 games in the, or 31 rather, in the 1968 season. The last player to win 30 games in a season, and probably will hold that distinction for eternity with the way that they're managing starting pitching playtime today. But stunning card. Oh, then this one, I picked this up for like $12 from the seller, and I mean, unreal. Unreal how sharp this card is. Unbelievable. I mean, this thing could challenge for a 9 as well. It's the Reggie Smith rookie. Absolutely beautiful. Then I've got a checklist I picked up from the seller. The seller had a few checklists, but this one really well centered. And it's the Roberto Clemente. They used to put a player's face on the checklist. So I figured, you know, pick it up for about $8 or something. A tiny bit of wear in that bottom left corner, but I'm expecting about an 8, which is, I think, worth about $40 at this point. So really nice card. And a lot of these commons, I'm not looking to keep. Even ones like the Clemente checklist and the Reggie Smith, I'm looking to flip them to recoup some of the cost for this order. Then I've got the Orioles team card. Again, whatever was really well centered, I bought. So, gorgeous card. Now we've got a few Hall of Famers. This one was actually not that well centered, but I purchased it anyway. Hall of Famer, Billy Williams. Definitely has a rough edge cut along here with a lot of fuzz, but really nice looking card. I'm expecting about a 6 to 7 on this. Fergie Jenkins, a little out of focus, which I don't really like. I'd like to pick up another one. Definitely off-centered some, just like the Billy Williams, but same deal, super sharp. I'm expecting about a 6 to 7. So then the Joe Morgan. I picked this one up from the seller, and you can see the centering is wonky on this one. But again, super sharp, expecting about a 6 to 7. But I decided the Joe Morgan looks so good, and it's his third-year card, that I wasn't happy with this card. I wasn't happy with the centering, but I fell in love with the card and really want one for my PC. So I went out and I purchased the second one. And that was actually a little expensive and definitely hurt my bank for a little bit. But I've got 2 of them. I'll be looking to move the one that grades lower, which I fully expect to be the one on the right. The one on the left, you can see the centering's excellent. Really no difference in clarity of the image. Still super sharp on the back. Does have a slight bit of wear on that corner, tiniest bit, but I expect them both to grade about a 7, and I think definitely I'm going to keep the one that's well centered. This one, I mean, it's not poorly centered, but you can tell it looks a little wonky. Image is definitely tilted on the card. Then this card is from my dad's childhood collection as well. The Superstars card with Harmon Killebrew, Willie Mays, and Mickey Mantle from 68 Topps. What an iconic card. I mean, this thing is worth $100 or so in, you know, PSA 2. So really expensive card. And I think it's probably about a 5, you know, the shape of the card. I've held off sending it in previous orders just because it does very sadly have this tiny blue line up here. And that's not a mark, that's on the case. On the card saver, but that tiny blue line I think is going to get it a mark designation, and that's going to knock the value all the way down, which really bums me out. I don't really want to have cards that have qualifiers in my collection, but this is for my dad's childhood collection, so I'm going to keep it either way, and it's high time I get it graded for what it is. Then again, same seller as before, really sharp cards. The seller has started uploading 68 cards, so not perfectly centered, but well centered. Art Shamsky. Pirates team card. Definitely somewhat out of focus, but you can see that's Clemente. Willie Stargell should be in this. He's number 8, I believe. And then Bill Mazeroski. That might be Maz. Next to Clemente. That might be Stargell, I'm not sure. It's kind of hard to tell with the, you know, the focus of the image. Or that might be Stargell, rather. Nonetheless, really sharp. Then just common, Bill Robinson. This card has a chance to get a 9 like some of the other ones I've talked about. I mean, unreal. This person really kept care of their cards because these things are ridiculous. Harmon Killebrew, same seller. A little bit more wear on this one. You know, well centered. A little bit more wear. You can see touch of white up there. You know, touch of wear in the corners, but I'm expecting it's probably about an 8. Ron Santo. Same deal, the All-Star cards. I don't really care for these All-Star cards. They're kind of cool, but I'm actually probably going to look to move them. I prefer the base cards. This card is, I mean, almost 50-50 centering. It is unreal, just like the Bill Robinson. I mean, just stupid sharp. Right? You know, you have to think, is the person really giving me this cards that are this sharp, or are they doctored? I keep measuring them. They keep coming up the right size, and there's no, there's no evidence of trimming. No one side is super white or anything. So we'll see, but they look absolutely great. And these cards, so I actually already have one of these graded. These are from my dad's childhood collection. The one I got graded is a 5. I have 2 others off at PSA right now that I expect to both get 4s. But I still had 2 left over. So yes, I had 5 1969 Topps Roberto Clementes. The thing is that the last 2 were all beaten up. But I've decided at this point, because a PSA 2 or 3 is now selling for like $50, it's time to get them graded. They're worth enough. So even though I probably won't even look to move them, this one is going to get a 1. I mean, it is awful. You can see tons of creases, surface wear, creases. I don't think this is a card my dad actually pulled from a pack, and the centering sucks. I think this was given to him by a friend, but nonetheless, it's a Clemente. And then I've got this one. Definitely way better, looks way, way better, right? You can see centering's much better, corners are much better. This card would probably get about 5. Even challenge outside chance for a 6, except you can see it on the surface there. It's got a wrinkle. It's got a little crease. So it's going to get a 4, potentially even a 3. And because of that, I haven't sent it in. Another interesting thing you can actually see holding these side by side is that the color is so different, especially on the bat. You can see this one has like a pink hue going all the way up, while the one on the left has a just purely yellow bat. Kind of interesting. You can see different print runs like that. Then I've got the 69 Topps Mantle Checklist. I have 2 of these. I think the other one would grade about a 5. This one probably about a 6. The 6 is now up into the mid-40s in money, in value, so I decided it's time to get this graded. This is, again, from my dad's collection. He actually had, I actually have 3 of these, but one of them is all marked up and used because, well, my dad was a kid. He was using it, right? There was no other way to track the set, so you can see sharp card, though. A little bit of wear on the corners. You can see a little wear up there, little edge wear, but I think about a 6 is appropriate. And the last card, also from my dad's childhood collection, the 69 Topps Tommy John. I think he and Jim Cott are due for the Hall of Fame. They just have to get in for what they accomplished. Both had over 280 wins. He's the namesake of the one of the most famous surgeries in sports, although, I mean, that's not really a reason to get into the Hall of Fame, but nonetheless, fantastic player. Had like a lifetime 3.3 ERA and 288 wins. You can see centering strong in this card, not perfect, but it's good. Corners aren't bad. Touch of wear, but really, really a nice looking card. And based on how cards of this quality have done in my past order, I expect this to get a 6, which isn't really worth much, probably about $15 to $20, but I'm not going to sell it. I'm actually expecting him to make it to the Hall of Fame someday. And it's almost a preemptive submission on that end, but also, even if he doesn't, it's Tommy John. Awesome player. It'll be great in the collection. So, yeah, there it is. 50 cards going off for the Swingin' 60s quarterly special. Feel free to drop a like and leave a comment if you have anything to say, any of these cards that you think are particularly cool. And yeah, thanks for joining me. Catch you later.